What does it mean to live life by saying yes and? Is it possible to feel joy even in the midst of life's most intense sorrow?
On today's episode, we have Lisa Valentine Clark here to talk about how joy and all the other emotions can coexist in a beautiful world. Stay tuned for today's Go and Be. Hello and welcome to Go and Be. I am Michelle McCullough, joined by Christy Gardner, and we also have with us Lisa Valentine Clark. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're so excited that you're here. Lisa is a woman of many skills and talents and also has an amazing bio. And if we sat here, we could not even do a whole show reading all of her talents and skills. But Lisa is an actress and a radio show host. And so we are so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
Welcome, Lisa. So, I think you are one of the funniest people that I've ever met. And everything I see Lisa in is funny. In fact, I watch reruns of Chatbooks commercials in the tub at night to make myself feel better about life. So tell me this, when is the first time when you knew you were funny?
Oh, I don't know. That's a hard question because I think when I was a little kid, you know, I would try to if I could make my brothers and sisters and my dad laugh, then I just was like on top of the world. So like I really worked hard for it. So I don't know if I would have really like said, yeah, I'm funny, because they made me work for it, by the way, for years, until maybe high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're like, you're welcome.
No.
Because you're so funny, because you had to work so hard for it.
I don't know if they still think I'm funny, but I found a new audience. I found my audience. How about that?
Is it your children?
No, heavens no. They're like, Mom tries so hard. Bless her heart.
Cute?
Yeah,
Isn't that
exactly.
cute? Mom's trying to be funny.
Yep.
So tell us about like your early life. Like I've known the last 10 years of you, but how have you always stayed in touch with this side of you, performing and funniness? What does that look like?
Oh, I don't know. I think that it's just more of just how I want to live. To be honest, I didn't go into a career. I thought maybe I would be a high school teacher. I did that for a couple of years. I thought maybe I'd be a writer, but I always loved performing. And so it was just one part of my kind of identity, but certainly not the only thing. And it wasn't until years later that sort of my side gigs, you know, what I did in college was the Garen's comedy troupe, which was sketch and improv. And then I was a teacher, and I really had to, they make you hustle and work for it when you're teaching English to junior high and high school students. So there were still elements of performance there. And then I created a theater as improv troupe, the Thrillionaires, with some of my friends. And we practiced, you know, when I had little kids, I would just tuck them into bed and then go off and do that. And so then that snowballed into voiceover work and commercial work and making movies and TV shows and just having a lot of fun.
So how important was it for you when you had those little kids to have something that belonged to you?
Oh, it's so important, right? So I had 5 kids in 10 years.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah. Well, my husband's working full time and going to school full time and, all the things, and directing plays at night. It was a little bizarre. And everybody has to find their thing, right? Yeah. And for some people, it's like going to bunco or book club or whatever. For me, it was just making up characters and playing pretend with my friends. And and I really feel that once I owned that of like, this is what fills me, and because there's a lot of different choices, some which are more socially appropriate than others. Yeah. Once I really owned, no, this is what like excites me and fills my bucket, it made me a happier, more relaxed person, which makes you a better parent, which makes you, better at your job and just happier.
When you say that socially appropriate, I relate to you as an actor. Yeah. So how did you get through the voices that were telling you, maybe a mom shouldn't go and be in plays at night, maybe a mom shouldn't go and make up characters at night? How did you get through that to be the person you are?
So that's a really good question, because I feel like everybody should, part of maturity is just like owning who you are and being comfortable with it. And people's comments of, oh, wow, it's nice that, your husband lets you, or, oh wow, it must be nice to have all that time, or who watches your kids? Whatever, those kinds of questions are just more reflective of the person asking it than it is. And once you don't really care. And also, you just surround yourself by people who are saying, that's so funny, I'll be there. Or that's so exciting, let's do this next. And sort of those yes and encouraging people. I just found those were the people that I wanted to hang out with. And so those voices became a little bit louder.
Love it.
I know that happiness and cheer and kind of making other people laugh is a part of who you are, not just who you are on a camera or on stage. And I remember watching you MC a women's conference many moons ago when your Real Moms book came out and you were telling the story about the van door closing and being nice to your kids and then also trying to be funny at the same time. How have you balanced that as a mom and as a woman and all the different pieces that you have going on? How have you tried to make humor part of your parenting and your life to help you get through challenging things?
I think that I have consciously looked at my life and thought, who do I want to be? You know, who do I not only want to be with, but like at the end of my time on earth, what do I want to have going? And I wanted to hang out with people who made me laugh. And I wanted to do certain things, like writing and acting and everything. And I just thought, why can't I? Why do I have to choose just one thing to do? Why can't I just choose a lot of things to do? And didn't really ask for anybody's sort of permission for that. And specifically motherhood. And I found this at other phases of my life, but it's a coping skill. You can look at the same thing in a lot of different lenses. And I found, I always wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to have a lot of kids. I love babies. I love everything about it. But we all know the reality of it, hits you and you're like, oh, what have I done? What's happening? And I think in those moments, and this did sometimes happen on purpose, but sometimes it happened accidentally. I would be telling somebody something that happened to my day, like, just the facts, ma'am. And I would say the facts and they'd start laughing. Like, oh, that's so funny. And I'd think, no, that's actually my real life.
I'm crying here.
You're laughing. Yeah, I'm right here. That really happened. And then other times I'm like, hey, this thing happened and then this happened. And so I found myself sort of framing it that way. Because I think that a lot of tragedies or horrible things, especially as a mom, you're looking around like, where are the cameras? Like, did anyone else see that? That was the funniest, that was the most ridiculous thing ever. And so those things make the best stories and you sort of put them in your pocket for later. I don't know why my pocket's on my shoulder, but you
can wear your emotions on your sleeve.
Exactly, and that's where I put them. And so I do feel like stories and storytelling, and as a former English teacher and word lover, I do feel like that's what connects us all, so that no matter what you do for a living or what your perspective is or background, like a good story is going to make me fall in love with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that that's, especially as moms, we're looking to make connections because most of our days we're isolated because there's just simply too much to do.
Absolutely. Well, and I love you talking about it being filters. It reminds me of like Instagram filters. There are ways that you can change things to make things look a little bit better. And you can look at an experience and go, oh, I can see the funny in that. Or you can look at an experience and go, I can see the terror in that. Or like, how did that even happen experience too. So there's and it can be the same thing, right? It's the same picture, but there can be some pieces to it.
And I would venture to say that there's maybe two things you can never joke about.
Sure.
And for everybody, that's different. But most things, with enough time, you can see in a different way. Not everything, but most things.
Most things.
Do your kids appreciate you turning situations into happy things or turning them around? Or do they kind of look at you and be like, oh, good, mom's got that funny filter going and I'm going to make it real hard on her?
Yeah, that's
the one.
Well, see, this isn't fair for you to ask because right now all of my kids are teenagers.
Right.
Or young adults. And so the young adults, at least, my sons who are in their 20s are just like, they know
cute, Mom.
Now to be like, to have good manners. Like, oh, mom pays the mortgage. Thank you. And you're helping with it. They know how to perform a little bit better. And then other teenagers are just like, okay, are you doing a thing?
I'll wait till you're done.
Yeah, I'll wait till you're done now. Can we talk? Yes, sorry.
So I love earlier when you were saying yes and that's a really familiar phrase for people in improvisation, this concept of yes and then what? How does your life change and how has it affected your life to kind of take that yes and approach instead of, wait, what's happening? No, but yes And now what, Lord?
So it's really interesting that you should ask that, because I wrote a book about motherhood. It has funny books about, real moms making it up as we go, using the principles of improv, yes, and how it's helped me bring challenges and things like that. Well, my words have come back to bite me.
Right?
And I have been through so many more worse, horrible, tragic events since that book came out. And those words have been thrown in my face a lot. So I have thought about a lot of them, but the principle stands. And that is like an improv, when you're doing a scene, okay, and the contract that you have with the other performers, especially if you have a group, you need to trust them and to be really humble about that and open to that. And we have that in the Thrillionaires. We do it on the show, on show-offs and stuff. We would just trust each other. That no matter what you give me in that moment, right? Because you're just coming off on the top of your head. So some ideas are great and some ideas are like, what? No matter what it is, we will not judge it in the moment. We'll just take it and then add to it. Mm-hmm. So for example, like you wouldn't say like, hi mom, how was your day? I'm not your mom, I'm your neighbor. What's wrong with you? Then it just, it stops the scene and then everyone's like that. I think the same is true with life. When you say like, here's this, for my life, it was this horrible diagnosis for my husband of ALS, a neurodegenerative disease that was terminal, has no cure, no treatment or anything. Me being in denial of that and saying, no, it's not that. Let's find out what else it is. It's not that. It's not that. Doesn't help anyone. It doesn't really serve anyone if it's definitive, right? So that's the offering. And yes, and is what then will you do with that when you're holding it? And you have every choice and every option to you, and you get to decide. And so there's great freedom, and like it sounds so great, like, oh, we just go with the flow. Yes, and yeah, whatever. But it's really inside, you just want to keep going to the next thing and to the next thing. It's helped me, I think, stay present when, especially when things seem overwhelming and you want answers that you're just not going to get. Like, what's going to happen in the future?
Right. Well, I love that you get a little authenticity training in your life, right? You're like, hey, this is how I handle everything. And then God's like, okay, well, let me give you a couple of other things and see if you can apply the same principles.
Is it still true?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you got to experience that real life, but you also got to do so a little bit publicly, I would say. So how do you feel like as you watched your husband and as you helped him and as he transitioned, how do you feel like that has changed because there was a part of that was public, that people watched you? Did you feel like, how did that affect the way that you looked at everything?
Oh, that's such a good question. So when he was diagnosed and we knew, this is a terminal disease, we don't know how much, I just collapsed in on myself of like, I don't want to see, and of course it was part of depression and shock, sheer shock. And telling people that he had this disease and giving them updates, because I was like, okay, I'm going to keep his family and friends informed after we go to each doctor. It was so painful because it was like I was experiencing it all over again. And I'm an empath. So when you tell somebody that, or you're like, it's getting worse, now he can't do this and he'll never do it again. Now he can't, next time you talk to him, guess what? His speech is going and you'll never hear his voice again. Like, saying those things out loud was so difficult. So I wanted to hide. I wanted to retreat and not have anything to do with anything. And my husband had, right at the beginning, my husband had quite the opposite response. He was full of hope. He was privately grieving, but outwardly he found himself comforting a lot of people and feeling like that was part of his calling in all of this, that this maybe gave it a little bit of meaning. And he realized, I don't have a lot of time left, so I want to make it count. So I'm not going to let anybody leave my presence, like whether we're like having a conversation, without me telling them that I love them, because this might be the last time that I speak to him and I don't know. And so he became so much more demonstrative, which he never really was like that before. So it was weird, but people loved it. And he would share his insights. He would share the things that made him happy that day. He was really good about being very present. And I saw very early on, and I would say after like the first year, 18 months, I saw the impact it was having, and I saw the byproduct that it left our family of saying, because we were all following his lead. And the fact that he was like, yeah, I'm in this wheelchair, so we're going to make funny videos about this wheelchair and I'm going to make fun of it. And he gave people permission to laugh about it And he's like, you know, what you see is what you get with him. And early on, a therapist gave him some really great advice about, you know, give yourself 10, 15 minutes to feel sorry for yourself during the day. Like, just no reason, feel sorry for yourself. And then move on to the next thing. And he used that. And really, after the first year, he didn't need 10 or 15 minutes a day. I was with him almost 24/7. And I saw it. And I thought, that's how I want to live. And so while I wanted to disappear, and I thought, this is so private, this is so horrible and embarrassing and raw, and, you know, what we were really experiencing it, the way that he was, you know, on his Instagram or on Facebook or whatever, and real life was the same. And it was so pure and brought so many people joy. We had so many great memories, and he gave us that. And I saw the power of that, and I couldn't deny it. And I wanted to be a part of it. And so then I didn't hold back. And I thought, you're overthinking it. Just yes and the heck out of this situation. And let's see where it takes us.
And then the yes and becomes a love story.
Oh, obviously. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Such a beautiful love story. I mean, you were...
Thank you.
You were connected from the time you were in high school. Is that correct?
No, I met him right after his mission.
But very early.
But very early. Yeah, I mean, I was 19 when I met him. 21 when we got married, which is a baby. I was a baby. And boy, I just think, good on me. What a great choice. I do. And I had that decision to make early on of like, am I going to regret this? And I'm going to say, oh, this ruins it, or am I going to be glad? And I was so glad, so relieved.
Yeah.
Felt like I had won the lottery.
I love that.
Beautiful.
And I love that what a gift it is that he didn't really lose his personality through all of it. Even when he couldn't speak, like you're posting things like, this is just what showed up from Amazon. Yeah. And it's a muscle shirt and a hula shirt. And
he would famously order random things from the internet. And I'd be like, what did Topher order today? Okay. This tells a story.
Absolutely. He didn't tell it, but I can tell this story. I love that. So I remember a day when I came to the radio broadcast house and to interview, and I stopped you right before the elevator, and I asked you, how are you? And this is when he was sick. And you said, can I be honest? And I said, absolutely. And you said something to me like, it's really hard and I hate it. And I loved you in that moment because I love the realness of that. And you shared real things on your Instagram. I never felt like you were only giving us the gloss it over. But I feel like there's something beautiful about feeling all of those emotions, that there can be joy and pain, and that you can look at it sometimes and say, no, I hate it, and it's hard, and I don't like it. And so how did you navigate all of that? And what are some of the things that you learned through that process, through those emotions?
Well, thank you for saying that. I feel like I stumbled through it. Like, you know, when you walk into a room and you kind of like trip and then you catch yourself and then you just keep going. I mean, there was just nothing graceful about it. But I felt like this is my real life. And I felt so many overwhelming feelings being in such a dramatic situation for so long, because all in all, I ended up, I mean, from that diagnosis, just hypervigilance all the time to try to be one step ahead of a disease where we knew 100% of the people with ALS die of ALS, 100%. Hoping that we would be the lucky ones to go past 2 years, past 3 years, you know. And I was desperate for connection when I felt like no one else was in my situation and no one else understood. I was desperate for help and encouragement and just was looking for it. And I think when you're so desperate, you recognize in people that you can trust who are really asking just to say, it's so bad, help me, but I don't even know what I'm asking for. I don't even know what I'm asking for in that moment. And I have come to learn over the last, I mean, it's been, since his diagnosis, it's been 5 years, almost 6. And I feel like I have learned, I know what I was looking for in that moment. And I know what other people are looking for when they have that look. And we're just looking for somebody to hold that space with us for just a second so we don't have to feel alone in it. And we need a little bit of their strength. And it's, I I've had so many desperate moments like that where, one comes to mind where it was getting near the end. I didn't know, but it was going to be weeks that he passed. And one of my kids was having a really hard time and needed some help. And my husband needed me. Like everyone needed me at this high level. And I was done, just spent. But it wasn't time. It was time for me to be on and be there for my kid. And I took him to the store, and we went to the store just to talk, to be outside of the house. And I saw one of my friends, and she just walked by me and said, "How are you?" And I looked at her like, "Help me." But I can't say anything because my kid is right here. But I'm desperate for something I don't even know. I mean, it was so crazy. And later that afternoon, she texted me and said, "I don't know what's going on, but I'm here for you and I love you." That's what I needed. I needed just
a witness.
Someone, I'm going through this horrible time and I don't know what to do. Do you see me? And she saw me in that moment. You saw me in that moment. And I've been, that's not usually my nature. It's not my nature at all. I'm having a hard time. I would never do that. And I've realized now how that can save people's lives.
Absolutely.
And don't you think the way that you've shared on social media and the way that you've been open gives other people permission to say, I need someone to witness me?
I hope so. So much discussion has been about social media and the pros and cons. And I think when it can make an authentic connection and it's not, because you can go either way, right? You can be all help me. You can be all positivity. And I think that there needs to be room for both. And everybody's different. And kind of finding that and navigating what's helpful and what helps and what's not is tricky. And I have been really grateful to have a core of really good friends that know my heart and know my motives and can kind of keep that in check.
Okay, so this is a personal question. I did not prep you in advance, so you can say veto anytime. What is harder, grieving before he passed or grieving after he was gone?
Grieving after he passed, 100%. It was, taking care of a grown man who can't do anything. He could, at the end, for several months, couldn't move except for his neck a little bit and one of his thumbs, and couldn't speak and couldn't do anything. I would try, had this anticipatory grief, knew how it was ending, and he was so good about keeping it focused. I'm still here. When I would start to break down, I'm still here. We're still creating memories. And he wasn't in denial, and he certainly wasn't letting me feel there was time for that, but not too much time. Don't get sunk, and I thought that was hard, especially during the pandemic when we had all of our help was gone, no more there. And we had so many, CNAs and nurses and doctors and physical therapists and speech therapists and stuff coming in to help us. And then it was nobody. And it was just me. And it was overwhelming. And yet I look back now at that time and it was beautiful and it was wonderful and I could live, and I wish that I were still living it right now. And I would do it again. And I was like, okay, the Lord is helping me and I've got physical strength and I can do this. I can take care of him full time while I'm working full time, while I'm taking care of kids. I can do it. Send me in, coach, And so when it ended, I was like, but I'm not done. I wish I were still doing it. Being without him, the grieving for the last almost 9 months, that's what has just knocked me down.
Do you feel him?
Every once in a while. Yeah.
How are your kids?
They're good.
How do you help them through this?
Oh, whew. That's where you get me with my kids. My kids are the best people I know. And when I look at my kids, each one of them is so different. And I am so proud of them. And I just feel almost like in awe a little bit of who they are. And Christopher used to say all the time, and I couldn't agree more, these kids were meant to come to us. These were in the order that they came, these kids. And especially as they get a little bit older, I learned so much from them and the way that they are unapologetically and the way that they help me, the way that they grieve honestly, and to be honest, we've all, What do? You go send your kid to a therapist, okay, and support groups, and you talk about it, but not too much. But, I've tried to do all the things, and make all the lists. And we've tried to be really, really honest about how we're feeling and knowing that we're all in this together. I have kids who are on way different faith journeys, personalities, education, age. They're all very, very different, but boy, we are together. And I feel Chris when I'm with my kids. It's hard to deny. Every once in a while, one of my older sons, soon after he passed, shaved his head and walked into the room, and it took my breath away. It looked so much like his dad. There's little moments of that. My oldest son was over for Sunday dinner and said something funny, and the way he said it was, and it's not just him mirroring his dad or any of the kids, because they've all done it. It's his influence on them. And Christopher was so emphatic about that. He was so convinced, I will be with you all the time. What else would I be doing? And I will guide you from the other side. And that's been kind of a difficult thing for me to talk about. But it's something that I work out on my own. And for me and my kids, we say, he's here. We're going to make him proud, And so it's just part of our grieving, how we talk about it.
Did you discuss it before he left? Did you talk about what this part would look like once he had gone to the other side?
Yeah, we did. That was one thing that we had the luxury of time. We didn't talk about it a ton because it was mostly because it made me so upset. I was like, well, it's going to be really hard, so just don't die.
I have a solution.
Yeah.
I thought it out.
And I kind of was like a spoiled brat about it, kind of like a teenager about it. Well, I don't want to talk, But Christopher tried really hard. He said, I know I'm fine. I know I feel at peace. I feel like this is God's plan for me. I feel very confident about this. And he would say, I want you to do this, or I hope you do this. I hope you don't do that, and kind of thing. And it was really hard for me to even imagine a life without him. Obviously, I have to. I don't have any other choice. And I'm really coming to terms with that, especially for my kids. And I know he wants to be me to be happy. And so, yeah, we talked about it. And there are some things some specific instructions that he gave me, some that I agree with and some that I don't. And I now, having had so many months, I'm grateful that we did, because now I'm desperate for it. What should I do? Where should, and I think I know what he said. I know what he would want. And I'm just kind of trying to come to terms with that. And I think that's a process. And I think it's a gift that he gave us, that he was that he was at peace with it. Because I think, well, then I can have that too.
Mm-hmm. And you can remember that he felt okay and not to mourn for his mourning. Yeah. Tell me, it's been about 9 months. Yeah. Tell me how you navigate every day. I'm sure there are ebbs and flows in terms of days that you feel fine and days that you don't. Mm-hmm. But then you also are a mother and you have a full-time job in addition to other projects that you do, like movies and commercials, whatever else. You got these things. How does that look like? What are some of the things that you do to keep things going?
I think that I have made a commitment to be kind to myself and to cut myself some slack. So if I'm having a day, and that's what's so funny about grief, some of the things that I think would be triggering aren't, and then all of a sudden I'm walking through the aisles of Target, and out of the corner of my eye I see a Fast and the Furious Lego set, and I burst into tears and I can't stop. Like, who could have guessed that?
You cannot plan for the Legos.
No, especially Fast and the Furious. I didn't even know they made them. Because he loved those movies and they're so dumb and I hate them so bad. And now I love them and watch them and cry. So it's fine, but it's fine.
It's fine.
And so I talk to myself, to be honest, I talk to myself like my child, like I'm my own. I say, let's just get up today. Put on your clothes and let's put on some makeup. Sure, why not? It'll make you feel better. Okay, okay. Just being kind and gentle, like, maybe we should go for a walk outside. Let's start making dinner. I just am trying to. I sound Lisa. Like, exactly. Like, you made dinner today. Like, good that was a good job. Yeah, I'm trying to be kind to myself because I am such both Chris and I were like so driven, and now we're going to do this, and we had these big, huge plans. And as a result, we were able to accomplish a lot. But, obviously this has knocked the wind out of all of us. And I want to make sure that, I'm dealing with it and grieving And that takes time, and it takes a lot of patience. So I think that's really what I'm trying to keep my habits and keep a routine by giving myself a little grace, a little on those days, like, it's okay, you know. You can't stay in bed and put the covers over your head every day, but sometimes you can. You know what I mean?
Sometimes
like,
you can.
Sometimes you can, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, just not all the days.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite thoughts is that Mother Eve fought for all of our emotions. She fought for the joy, absolutely, meant that they might have joy, but ultimately her decision meant that we would have and feel all of it, that we would feel the grief and that we would feel the heartbreak and the sadness, but we'd also have happiness and sunshine and good things in those places, and like we've talked about, sometimes at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and I would venture to say, I think most of the time we're never just feeling one emotion. I think that's more rare than, I think, I mean, when I think about the end and saying goodbye, we were laughing and crying, and how fitting is that? And that's kind of what my life looks like now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We ask all of our guests the same question. So if you could give our audience one piece of advice about how to go and be in this world, what would that look like?
I would say be honest about how you feel and who you want to be. I think that being honest with what the situation is completely and taking a good hard look at it is the only way that you can move forward and really be who you want to be.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lisa,
Thanks
for
having
coming.
me.
We are so happy that you chose to be here and so thankful that you would choose to be vulnerable, because it's only in the honesty where we can help each other. And I believe that you have helped our listeners and our viewers today to recognize that it's okay to go into the world and be a person who feels things honestly, that it's okay to show up every day just as you are, that it's okay no matter what's happening to find humor, to find joy, to find love in the situation. It's okay to go and be.
Sweet Salt. Save 15% at Siegelbook and sweetsaltclothing.com.